Yeah, I was going to show us how to design tools that produce consistent, useful outputs for teaching and workflows, and you'll get a practical framework you can apply right away. So yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll get your presentation up on the screen and get started. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. Do I come through clearly? Okay. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm Yao Yang. I work as an institutional researcher in the Office of Provost at Purdue University. So today I want to talk about something very practical, very similar to what just Jennifer shared, like how to create and build kinds of AI systems that we can actually use in our work. So I have lots of information I feel excited to share, but given the limited time, I may not go too much technical and details. So, and then I will have Mac to help us post my handouts. I have created many handouts for you to navigate now or later. So, because this topic I have been, so in the past couple of months, I have been teaching and learning with my colleagues to build a kind of AI assistant and also do a lot of workshops. There's a lot of information, so I am narrowing down to just 25 minutes. So I hope this session will be helpful for you, for your work. And I also noticed that in this conference, there are many sessions that are talking about how to build this a kind of AI assistant. You will find some information because the fundamental is the same, so you'll find some information might be overlapping. So I hope through my session you can find something new and bring some new insights. So just to get started, let me first give you a quick overview of how this session is structured. So in this session, I will cover I will cover three parts. First, I walk through the basics of how to build a custom AI assistant, and this includes like how to structure the instructions so the AI behave in consistent and useful way. And second, I will show a simple demonstration of how to set up a custom assistant. And you can also find all the details in the handout. So the goal here is not technical depth, but to help you understand the logic behind the design. And finally, I will introduce how to evaluate any kinds of AI agents we build. This is a very critical part because it helps us determine whether we can trust and use the AI output in some decision making through the agent we made. So let's get started with part one, the basics of creating a custom AI assistant. Yeah. Okay. So when we build an AI assistant, we're not just writing a prompt, we're designing a structured set of instructions. So for any kinds of prompts, I think there are 5 key components. The first is instruction. This tells AI exactly what to do, such as categorize, such as you wanted to categorize, summarize, or audit. And the second important component of prompt is the context or institutional memory. So this includes like your institution's mission or your office mission, your strategic goals, or the framework you use in your work. Like in my work, we are doing a lot of program evaluation. So we have been using the Kirkpatrick's evaluation model to design the evaluation, to design the surveys, and we're also using the kinds of models to guide our work. So this helps. So the context helps the AI align with how your institution thinks. And the third important component is the input data. This is the actual material you give to the AI, such as some examples of past reports or some like survey results or some policy documents from your institution or any kinds of like documents you feel that is important for your AI assistant to know. And the fourth component is constraints. So these are the guardrails. They define what the AI should not do. For example, because we're dealing with a lot of sensitive information, so we got to tell our assistant that never use student's name in any kinds of report or never make any unsupported claims based on the because that will drive to the hallucination. And the fifth key component is an output indicator. So this tells our assistant what the final answer should look like, maybe some table or some just short executive summary for different audience type. So I think with these 5 components are clearly defined in your prompts, the AI becomes much more consistent and reliable. That is the area we have been struggling with when using AI. And next, I will show you how we move from this basic structure to design a full AI assistant. This is an anatomy of a custom AI assistant. It's very similar to what Jennifer shared, because we can build this AI assistant in ChatGPT, in Gemini, in Claude, or in Copilot. In our university, we are primarily relying on the Copilot. That is what we have been told. Copilot is the only large language models we're able to use for our work, because we have the licensed version and we have the paid membership. So in Copilot, if we want to build any AI assistant, there are 4 components. The first is instruction. This is where we define the core mechanics, such as how the AI should process information, like some examples or structured reasoning patterns. And the second part we got to put into the Copilot is the suggestive prompts. These are like some preset buttons that guides the users to ask questions in a consistent way. That means when you're talking to your assistant, you do not need to type your prompt again and again. So this helps reduce some variability in how we interact with the assistant. And the third one is the knowledge files. We got to upload some important files to your assistant. So these documents you can upload some like PDFs or some spreadsheets. They serve as the assistant's like internal knowledge base and allow it to ground its responses in your data. For like in my work, when we're doing, we just created a qualitative data analysis assistant. So I uploaded uploaded different articles about some scholarly article about different coding framework, and also some reports we generated in the past. We feel like this can serve as some good examples. And the fourth component is capabilities. This includes some additional functions such as web browsing that allow the assistant to bring some external information. So when we combine these 4 components, we just move from a simple tool to a more structured and reusable AI assistant. So now I'm going to introduce a framework. I find it is very helpful in building any kinds of like AI assistant in any kinds of large language models. We call it Capital Framework. So it's a design framework that helps us define the communication style of an AI assistant. So each letter represents one dimension. The C means confidence. That means we tell our AI we want it to provide some clear and decisive responses. And the second one is amicability. That is, we want the AI's tone is supportive and approachable. And the next one is professionalism. That is, we want the AI's language is appropriate for institutional settings. The next one is interactivity. That we want our assistant can ask follow-up questions or guide us. And the next one is the most important one, I think, is transparency. We want our assistant explains its reasonings or limitations when it's needed. And the next one is adaptability. That is, we want our assistant can adjust based on can adjust the output based on different tasks or users. And the last one is lexicography. That we want our system use the precise and appropriate terminology. So just give an example. So I will still use the example of this qualitative data analysis assistant. You can see that this is instruction we give to the AI assistant. In the instruction part, we start with like a persona pattern. You say act as a senior institutional research analyst, and then based on this capital framework, we give very detailed instructions of like how we want this AI assistant behave. Given the limited time, I will not go through all these details. And then I just want to show you like a design model when building this AI assistant. The first layer is the behavior layer. This is where we define how the assistant communicates. This includes the persona pattern and the capital framework we just discussed. And the second layer is a task layer. This is where we clearly define what the assistant is supposed to do. This is the most important layer because some unclear tasks can lead to unreliable output. And the last one is the operational layer. This is where we decide what tools an assistant can use and define the limits of those tools. So these three layers together help us move from some ad hoc design to a more structured and repeatable approach. You can find you can find all, so in the handout 2.1, this is an example about how we combine this three-layer design model and the capital framework to set up the assistant. Okay. So given the limited time, I will not go through all these details, and you have the handout. You can read it by yourself later. I just want to briefly show that. So we built this assistant in Copilot. So this is the AI assistant configuration in the Copilot. So on the left, you can see like the basic setup, including the name and description of assistant. So in this case, it's designed as a qualitative analysis assistant. So in the center, you see the instructions. The instructions is very, very long. So I cannot screenshot all this message. So this is just a part of the instructions, but you can find all the details instructions in the handout. So in the instruction part, this is where we define the behavior layers, including the persona and communication style, using the capital framework. So this section is important because it shapes how the AI thinks and responds. On the right, and you can see there is a knowledge section. This is where we can control what sources the assistant use, including whether it accesses some external information or not. At the bottom, you see some capabilities. You can turn on these buttons, and then it asks you to set up some predefined prompts. So you can decide what kind of prompts you want to give. So I think this is just a brief example, shows how the different components we discussed come together into just one system. And now you have seen how to build an assistant. So and then I'll move to the final part. That is a little bit challenging. You will hear some technical stuff, but I hope it will not be intimidating. So the final part is about like how to evaluate the AI output. Okay, so to understand this, I want to compare it with the traditional assessment. So in the traditional assessment, we focus on the validity and reliability of a tool, and also the evidence quality and interpretation of a tool. But in AI evaluation, the validity becomes the accuracy and grounding. That means the output is not only correct, but also based on some provided data. The reliability becomes consistency or stability, because we want similar outputs when we give similar inputs. And the evidence quality becomes the output and reasoning. So it's not enough to just say the answer. We also want to understand how the AI arrived at that answer. That's why we want our assistant to be transparent as much as possible. And then interpretation becomes the risk and framing, because we need to consider whether the output could mislead the stakeholder, because the output sometimes may mislead the stakeholders or introduce some bias. So this shift from traditional assessment to AI evaluation is important. It's is important because AI is not just giving answers, it is generating interpretations that can influence decisions. And then I'm going to introduce a more structured framework for evaluating the AI output. Since I'm doing the institutional research work, our AI evaluation is not just about the correctness. We always treat the AI output as just candidate interpretations, not the final answers. So that means every output needs to be checked and evaluated before it is used. So there are three key areas we need to consider for our institutional work. The first area is the evidence alignment, because we need to ask whether the output generated by the assistant we created is grounded in the data we provided. And the second is the analytic process. We need to examine how the AI arrived at its conclusions and whether it followed the instructions correctly. And the third one is the consequence of interpretation. We need to consider whether the output could introduce the bias, like we discussed before, mislead the stakeholders, or create some risks in the decision making. And these three areas correspond to three types of validity. That is the output validity, process validity, and consequential validity. So now I'm going to show how we can operationalize this evaluation in practice. As we discussed before, the first is the output validity. What does it mean? What do we want to evaluate? So the output validity focuses on the technical checks of the AI output. We create this AI assistant when we're going to check the output validity. First, we check the accuracy. We check whether the numbers are correct, if applicable, whether the output is internally consistent or not. And second is the completeness. We need to see if the AI has missed any important dimensions or themes in the data. And the third one is faithfulness. That means the output must be grounded in the data we provided, not based on any kinds of assumption or external information. So this is important, but it's only the starting point. The next validity we got to check is the process validity. What does it mean? So the process validity focuses on the quality of the analytic process, not just the final output. First, we check the transparent reasoning. We want the steps to be visible, include like how the AI groups data or identifies themes. Second, we check the procedural fidelity. We check whether the AI follows the instructions and the constraints we defined. And also the replicability. If we give the same input, we should get a similar output. So this is important because even if the output sometimes looks correct and reasonable, but the process may not be reliable. So that's why we also need to check the consequential validity. So this is the most critical part in institutional research work, because here we ask whether the AI output could like introduce some bias, overstate the findings, or mislead the stakeholders. So even if the output looks accurate and the process seems reasonable, the interpretation can still create risk. So we can think of this like in terms of the risk level. The low risk includes some issues like formatting problems. The medium risk like includes the incomplete or partially accurate interpretation. And the high risk includes some like misleading conclusions that could influence decisions in the wrong direction. So this consequential validity reminds us that the AI output are not neutral. They can shape how decisions are made. So the evaluation is not just about the correctness, it is about responsibility. There are many like research studies to show that the current large language models like the ChatGPT or Gemini are introducing some bias outputs. And now I will show how we can systematically evaluate the AI outputs using a structured approach, and that is called the deep eval. So DeepEva actually is an AI tool. DeepEva is a testing framework designed to evaluate AI agent output using some predefined metrics and structured test cases. It has thousands of metrics to evaluate if the to evaluate the AI agent. So it's commonly used in industry to systematically test the large language model systems. So the purpose of using DeepEva is to provide a structured and scalable way to evaluate the AI instead of relying on some subjective judgment like, oh, this looks good or this looks bad. So it helps us move toward some measurable quality signals, such as whether the output is aligned with the data, follow instructions, and produce consistent results. So DeepEva itself is using large language models as judge. So when we test our agent in DeepEva, it will give us some scores on different dimensions from 0 to 1, which allows us to compare the performance across different prompts or system designs. And based on this DeepEva result, we are able to know where we should improve our assistant, where our assistant is performing good or bad. Here are some core predefined metrics in DeepEva, and I think we have been using these core metrics to evaluate the most AI assistant we have been developing. I think these are some very helpful core metrics. As I mentioned before, DeepEva has many metrics, and I think these are the core metrics. The first one is answer relevancy. These metrics check whether the output actually answers the task. For example, in the assistant we created, if we ask the assistant to identify the themes in some student feedback, does it actually produce the themes, not just a summary? This is the metrics we want to check. And the second metric is faithfulness, or we call it groundedness. That checks whether the themes and interpretation are supported by actual student comments rather than being inferred or generalized without evidence. The next core metric is context precision. That looks at whether the assistant is using some relevant or not, to see is it focusing on some meaningful data we provided or including some unrelated or some low value data. And the next very important metric is context recall. It checks whether the assistant used all important information or not, and it is also a very important metric to see if our assistant is reliable or produce some consistent output. The next very important one is hallucination metric. We definitely want to have a very low score in this hallucination metric because we do not like hallucination at all. And finally, the core metric is the bias metric that checks whether the assistant used some inappropriate language or introduced some biased interpretation of student experience. This bias metric is very important for our institutional work. So together, these metrics can help us evaluate whether our assistant, like the quality of analysis assistant, is producing results that are accurate, complete, or responsible. Now let me show you how we design these test cases to apply these metrics in practice. We need to create a golden data set. There is a link to understand what a golden data set is, and there are many YouTube videos to introduce a golden data set. Just click this link, and it seems like this link is broken. So if you're interested in know more what is golden data set, please feel free to search in YouTube. We need to create this golden data set. And so what is golden data set? So it is essentially a small, carefully selected set of examples that represent what good output look like, what bad output also look like. So you can think of it like a grading rubric combined with some sample answers, and all these sample answers are created by ourselves. So in industry, a key important job for the product manager or project manager is to create this golden data set. So I think I'm running out of time, but I will finish these slides in 1 or 2 minutes. I will just briefly introduce what this golden data set is and how to create this golden data set. So this golden data set consists of a kinds of golden cases, like the standard case, edge case, ambiguous case. This is an example how what kind of cases we created to evaluate the qualitative assistant, AI assistant we created. In each case, this is the structure of each case. We have different spreadsheets. In different spreadsheets, you can also, in the handout, you can find this spreadsheet as examples. You can take a deep look about what a golden data set should look like. I just want to wrap up it. So with this golden data set, we're able to test the performance of the AI assistant we created, and based on the score we get from the deep eval, we are able to go back to our AI assistant setup to change some setups or to give more instructions and more constraints to update the AI assistant we develop. I just want to share that I think very important is to always update your AI assistant based on your user experience. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. And I know I know there is a lot of information. If you want to take a deep look, just refer to the handout. I'm happy to take any answers you have right now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.